In the last stream, we were working on getting started with the industrial foregoing mod. We set up a couple of fluid extractors to generate latex. We set up the latex processing unit to turn that latex into tiny dry rubber. And we set up this guy over here, the dissolution chamber, to make upgrades for our other industrial foregoing machines, like our mob slaughter factory, and more importantly, our crusher. And right at the end of the last stream, we used the 6 witherproof blocks over at the end of our cobblestone platform there to spawn and kill our first wither, and in doing so, get our first nether star. And so the plan for today's stream is going to be to look at basically upgrading our resource production setup. We're going to start by getting our first apiary. That's going to allow us to start moving bees out of this bee apartment and into the apiaries, which is not only going to give them more room and make it easier for them to pollinate on blocks, but it's also going to make it so that we get even more resources than we're currently getting, especially as we move through the different tiers of apiary. And the apiary also is pretty nifty in that you can add a bunch of different features to the apiary, such as an apiary breeder, which is going to make breeding bees going forward so much easier, in that we don't have to place them down physically in the world, and we don't have to physically right-click and give each of them whatever resource it is that they need to breed. We can kind of automate the breeding process, which is going to be very nice indeed. To do that, though, we have to actually, first of all, make an apiary, and then we have to set up the multi-block structure for that apiary. So the apiary itself is made with 4 honeycomb blocks, 4 tier 4 beehives, and a nether star. And the tier 4 beehives, for the most part, I don't think are going to be too expensive. It is going to require a surprising number of honeycomb blocks. Thankfully, we do have quite a lot of cobblestone honeycomb blocks, which I think should be, for the most part, all that we need. I am going to steal a few more out of here, though, just in case we do end up running a little low. And one other thing that we are going to need, that I have been warned about, is a staggering amount of grass, because the tier 1 beehive here requires 8 grass to be made, and then from there, you need that same 8 grass 4 times to make 1 tier 1 apiary, and then making the higher tiers of apiary becomes very expensive, especially grass-wise and nether star-wise, very quickly, because to get a tier 2 apiary, you need 4 tier 1 apiaries, and then to get the tier 3 apiary, you need 4 tier 2s, and then the tier 4 is 4 tier 3s. And so every single tier 4 apiary here requires the 3 tier 3 apiaries. Each one of those requires 4 nether stars, but also tier 2 apiaries. And so you can see here that very quickly, the amount of grass that we're going to need is going to compound quite a bit. For the most part, it shouldn't be a problem. We do have unlimited bone meal, basically, in the fact that our mob farm keeps producing bones, and we also have our shears, or the ability to make really as many shears as we like. So we can, whoops, I did not mean to make that many shears. I meant to make 1 shear, but that is completely fine. We now have as many shears as we like. And so we can, if we like, do it the old-fashioned way and just kind of bone meal some grass like we have over here, and then shear that grass to get the grass, the short grass, I guess, and of course, as per usual, I end up picking up my ender flames. That's fine. We can put those back down in the future, but it also might not be a terrible idea to look at using another botany pot to start kind of passively growing grass, so that much like with our nether wart and our sugarcane, when it comes time for us to actually need it, we hopefully have, you know, a few hundred, if not a few thousand grass ready to go. And so real quick, I'm going to go ahead and make another hopper botany pot. I'm going to place that hopper botany pot down over here next to our nether wart and sugarcane botany pots. And I'm also going to get a bit more trim so that we can connect these storage drawers here to our drawer controller and thereby make them accessible to the simple storage network. Real quick, we do have a slight problem here. I've made a slight mistake in that this drawer controller is too far away from these drawers here. So in newer versions of Minecraft, the range on the drawer controller is much bigger, but in this version of Minecraft, the storage drawer controller here has a range of 12 blocks, which means you can only have drawers a maximum of 12 blocks away from the controller. And if we count here, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So here is the very edge of the controller's reach. And so despite the fact that we do have oak logs and oak saplings in here, those oak logs and oak saplings are not available in the system. You'll see there are 74 here, but if I take all of those out and I put them in this drawer, they won't be accessible when we go back because those drawers are not reachable by the system. Thankfully, it's a fairly easy fix for us. All we should have to do is take the sender card here, because we're going to have to change where that's sending its items to, and we're also going to have to pick up this drawer controller and kind of just move it more towards the center of this area. I'll probably end up putting it maybe right about here. That's going to give us the maximum amount of range on the left and right to connect really as many drawers as we like, and that should be perfect in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, that's going to give us a range that is basically the size of our platform, which I think is going to be perfect. And not too long later, we've got another drawdown here with another hopper botany pot on top, and if we just put some grass in here, that should, hopefully, start to grow. It might need to be regular grass for this to work. Can I craft regular grass? The answer is yes. I can craft it in the tempered glass jar with no heat. I think that might be required in order for this to work. That is completely fine. Let's take a regular old seed and we'll drop it in over here with the dirt that's already in there, I guess. And then over here, let's go for grass. Start. Cool. I did also move the draw controller, so that is now over at the back here. And I did reset up the filtered link cable, and I reconfigured the sender module here, so now it's sending them down towards that new controller position. And the good news is that we also now have space here for another compacting drawer as well, which is going to be helpful as we add more resources going forward. We did run into one small issue, and that one small issue is that when I went to break my draw controller did get deleted because it got picked up by the absorption hopper and then for some reason got sent to the trash can. I'm not entirely certain why that was the case, but for some reason, despite the whitelist filter, certain blocks are still getting deleted if they're dropped nearby. What I've done to fix that is I've changed the area inside the absorption hopper here. So in here, if you click show area, there's a yellow outline that comes up. By default, this is set to 0, 0, and 0. So by default, this is the area that the absorption hopper will collect items in. And if I were to go ahead and break some cobblestone here, what was happening is I was breaking stuff. Obviously, this wasn't full. Right now, it's backed up because things are not being sent to the controller, which is something we need to fix. But I was breaking things. They were getting picked up. And for whatever reason, they were getting pulled by the puller module here, despite the fact that the puller module does have a whitelist to only pull these things. I'm not quite sure why that's the case, but the solution is just to change this area. So for us, we're going to set this to 2 and this to 4. And you'll see that kind of moves the area to fully be within the mob farm. And so now if we do break something here, it doesn't matter. It's not going to get picked up by the absorption hopper, despite the fact that it's right next to the absorption hopper. So real quick, let's go grab that grass from over here and let's get that placed over into the hopper pot so we can start making some other grass. Boom, boom, and boom. Fantastic. Does grow pretty quick, which is good. The reason why we've got a 2x2 draw here is because we are also going to get tall grass as well. And so I'm going to do something like this. And I guess we probably need to have this unlocked potentially. The reason I think we need to have it unlocked is that we are going to get tall grass and the botany pot needs to be able to place that tall grass into the drawer so that it doesn't end up clogging up inside of the botany pot. And then we could also do with putting maybe a void upgrade and potentially some storage upgrades on here as well. The other problem that we just saw is that over here, we now need to change the way this works. We need to set, I think, the bottom to item instead of the west. And we probably need to pull out of that absorption hopper and send items around to the draw controller. I think the easiest way for us to do that, I was going to say is maybe with an item pipe, but to be honest, it might actually be with another modular router. Actually, the Twitch chat is correct here. I completely forgot about the fact that the draw controller slave exists. The draw controller slave, this guy right here, essentially acts like a draw controller, but you can place it down not where the draw controller is. It essentially is going to allow us to pump items into the storage drawers in the same way you can with the draw controller, but not where the draw controller is. The downside, the draw controller slave doesn't extend the range of your draw controllers. People get confused with that quite often. They'll ask me if you can just put down a draw controller slave, if that gives you an extra 12 blocks of range. It doesn't, but what we can do is we can get a little bit more in the way of nether quartz here. We should definitely look at getting a nether quartz be sooner rather than later, but with that nether quartz, we should be able to make a draw controller slave. And so a little bit of nether quartz later, we can make 2 redstone comparators, make ourselves a draw controller slave. For that, we are just missing some regular storage drawers. That's fine. Again, I'll make the 2x2 ones here. I think they're the best value. And then from there, that's everything we need for the slave. We are going to need some trim. That's fine. We have some left over from when we connected up these drawers. Those are now connected, by the way. And so over here, if we put the slave down right about there, and then we put some trim down right about here, and I guess we also want trim down, actually, under here as well. So I'm going to have to get rid of this so that this and this can connect, which is completely fine. Let me get my compacting drawer. We're going to put that down right about here, making sure to put the key in the offhand so it goes down locked. And here, as you can see, we now have all the items doing exactly as they were before. They're all getting piped directly into their respective storage drawers. Nice. And so now this system does work in its entirety. We should be able to see the saplings. We totally can. And we should also be able to see our nether wart, our sugarcane, and our grass. Nice. And so now that that is taken care of, let me go ahead and see if we can't get our first apiary. Of course, again, we are going to have to keep checking on this, I think, because we do need tall grass to come in there. People have pointed out that we can bone meal the botany pot, which generally I don't think is necessarily worth doing because it's just faster and easier to bone meal grass and then shear it if it's just grass that we're after. But of course, in this scenario, the thing that we're after is some tall grass so that we can actually fill this slot and then lock the drawer. Because if we don't lock the drawer, the botany pot will eventually just get clogged up and it'll stop working, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of having the botany pot. The downside is that it's not a very high chance that we get any tall grass in the first place. And so it could take quite a few stacks of bone meal to get that first bit of tall grass and kind of fill up that slot so we can then lock the drawer. Hey, never mind, we've done it. Nice. Okay, cool. Let me lock the drawer. Boom. And let me also put some upgrades into there. I do think we'll go with the diamond upgrade, like this, because by default, each one of these can only hold 512 items, and so that's only going to be 1,500 grass, which sounds like a lot, but I think given the number of tier 4 apiaries we'd like to get at some point in this pack, that's really not going to be anywhere near enough grass. And so back over in here, let's see if we can't get that very first apiary. To do that, we need to get 4 of the tier 1 beehives. These, thankfully, super easy to make. We then need to upgrade those with our new grass to make 4 tier 1 beehives. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is where it could get a little dicey because from here we need to get a lot of comb. I don't think we're going to have a problem with beeswax. I think we could have a problem with honeycombs here, but let's see. Which combs is it using by default? Wood combs are completely fine. Let's have a look. What other combs would we like to use? I think we can use these water honeycombs quite safely here. I don't think we need those. From there, upgrading it to the next tier, we need blocks of beeswax and we need blocks of comb. I am specifically going to use the cobblestone honeycomb just because we have so many of those blocks. And then we'll do the same again here, upgrading to the tier 4 version as well. Honey blocks we've got in abundance. And again, cobblestone honeycomb blocks are going to be our block of choice. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And with that, that should be basically everything that we need for our apiary. It is. And so the apiary, unlike the hives, does require a specific multi-block structure in order to work. And I'm going to place my apiaries down over here. The multi-block structure is a 7x7 by, I want to say 5. We can view it though. If I put this down, I'm going to put it down a little bit higher up because the apiary does go kind of a few blocks up into the multi-block structure. So I'm going to put it down like here. And in here, if we click the little I button, it will show us the layout of the apiary. Now, it's a little hard to see, given that it is nighttime. However, I have moved my bed closer so that we can sleep more easily. And this is what the apiary looks like. So the apiary goes down. There's then a 5x5 internal space and a 7x7 external box that goes down for the apiary structure. Now, the blocks that you make this out of do need to be specifically blocks that are apiary compatible. The way that you can figure this out, in JEI, if you type in $apiary, these blocks are apiary compatible. If you want more detail, if you press F3 and then H, you can turn on advanced tooltips. And if you hover over any block and press Control, you can see this big long list of tags. The tag that you're looking for specifically is resourceful bees :valid_apiary. It's about halfway down where it says item tags, and then right at the bottom there, just over where it says Minecraft in the middle, resourceful bees :valid_apiary. If the block has that tag, it can be used in the making of an apiary. If it doesn't have that tag, it can't be used in the making of an apiary. Thankfully, most of the chisel blocks can be used, and so for us, I'm pretty sure that this structure would work. Like, all of these planks work, the clear glass does work, and the honey glass does work. The honey glass is an interesting one in that I don't think it has the tag, but in my testing, it does still work, which would make sense because it's also from the same mod. And so what I am going to do is I'm going to build my apiaries, starting here, and then kind of building out in this direction. I'm going to build a few of them next to each other, and then what we'll do is once we've gotten rid of all the bees from our bee apartment complex over here, we'll then do the same thing on this side, and I think we'll have kind of like 2 strips of apiaries on the left and right of our processing plant. It doesn't matter, by the way, which blocks you make the floor out of. You do want to have some kind of floor so that the bees don't escape, but the floor can be made of anything. And so I guess for us, we want ours kind of 1 block up, but then I think 7 blocks back. So here we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I want the apiary to go down right here, and I think I might have to place it down kind of up against the bank like this for it to go down in the right direction. That is not right. That's in the wrong direction. Never mind. Let me get rid of that. Let me try that again. If we go ahead and break this, ideally without losing it, because it was a little expensive to make. Not staggeringly so, but like, I don't want to have to make it again. So let's really try not lose it. There we go. Instead, let's go ahead and place it down like that. And again, I make the same mistake I make with the apiaries. If you shift, it does go down facing the opposite way. So you can do it like that, and that does work. If you don't shift, it'll go down facing towards you. Either way, this, I think, should be correct. It is. I want the final block to be at the bottom there because I want my floor block to be kind of embedded in the ground. So we can get rid of all of the cobblestone. Perfect. And I'm kind of going to use the same design language that we've used over here for this apartment complex. The only difference is that I'm obviously not going to use regular grass because we had problems with that last time in that we ended up with too many chickens inside of our setup, and those chickens end up causing problems for us later on down the line. One thing we can do, and that I think I might do, is I might use some vivid grass from Botania. This looks like grass, but isn't grass, and therefore doesn't spawn any passive mobs. The way we get vivid grass is by getting a vivid pasture seed, and to make this, we need a regular pasture seed and some green dye. The pasture seed is pretty straightforward. It's just grass in the mana pool with a tiny little bit of mana. And so if we do this, we can get a regular pasture seed. I do think we probably already have the ability to get green dye with our pestle and mortar. We do indeed. And then if we do this, this gives us a vivid pasture seed. And from there, all we need to do is take some dirt, I guess ideally also take our wand, and if we build out the platform that we want over here, which for me is going to look something like this. I think I'm going to build the... Ooh, how do I want to do this? Do I want the whole thing? Because I might actually... Do I want to build the whole thing out of grass? I think so. Let's do this. Let's do this. And then let's wand that all the way back to the apiary. From there, we can just right-click with the Vivid Pasture Seed right in the middle, and that should begin transforming all of that into Vivid Grass, which looks like grass, if a bit darker. I quite like the color, actually. And I actually don't know if that's going to spread. It might not spread. If it doesn't, we just have to make one more Pasture Seed, which is really not the end of the world. As you saw, it was quite straightforward, but it should give us the benefit of looking like grass without having the downsides of spawning passive mobs. Okay, so not too long later, and we have a pretty familiar-looking design here. We've got honey glass on the entirety of the front. Super easy to make. We've got so many honey blocks now. This is not a problem. And then we've got clear glass all around, apiary at the back, grass on the floor, and we've got our braced chiseled oak planks all around. Now, you'll notice by the fact that this is not like yellow in the middle, that this is currently not actually built. The reason for that is that there is one final piece of the puzzle that is required, and that is the apiary storage. That's this guy right here. For that, we need 4 chests, again, 4 more honeycomb blocks, and a hopper. The only thing we don't have, apparently, is 4 chests. That is fine. We can make quite a few chests if we do something like this, which I feel like we might as well do. We are always needing more chests. And then, as per usual, I am going to use the cobblestone honeycomb blocks, of which we now have surprisingly few left, to make our apiary storage. Now, this can go anywhere, I believe, inside of the frame of the multi-block. I am probably going to put mine up at the top here. This is a slightly awkward place to put it, but if I put that there, sometimes you have to open the apiary to validate it, but you'll see that this is now yellow and this is working, and we've got the interface. So the reason I've put it there is that I want to have our, and I also kind of want to get that wood back. The reason I put it there is that I want to have our resources kind of flying around over to the modular routers, and I think it's going to look coolest if they're flying kind of from the top of the apiaries. It does mean for now we're going to have to kind of reach up to grab what's in here, but essentially, unlike with the other beehives that we have over here, where you have to shear them and then pick up the combs using a vacuumulator, over here with the apiary, the cool thing is that you can just open the apiary storage and all of the combs that are generated are going to be stored in here. So we just need to pull out of here over to our modular router, and we should be good to go. So the way this works, and real quick, before I show you the way this works, let me get some torches down on the top of this thing, just so we don't end up with any mobs spawning. As you can see, they are primed to spawn up there, which is not ideal, but essentially how this works is kind of in the same way as a regular hive. We take a bee, and we can grab our bee jars here, which I think we might actually be out of because we've got so many bees at this point, but let me get a fresh batch of bee jars, and let's go steal some of our bees. So we'll take our bees. Let me grab these guys, I guess, for now. And then let's also go ahead and steal the nectar block. So this is our ancient bee that's going to make netherite for us. What we can now do is you can either place the bees down manually inside of the apiary. You do still have to have the nectar block in here. Again, you can have it embedded in the floor, or you can just put it down really wherever you like. You can decorate this really however you like inside. That's not going to affect the structure. The only thing that has to be specific is the actual outer frame. And from there, you can either place the bees down like this, and that will work. Or alternatively, in here, you can put a bee in and click import. That'll bring the bee in. And now the bee is ready to go inside of here. And you'll see that there is a maximum of 9 bees, and I think you just have to click unlock that actually. There are a maximum of 9 bees you can put inside of the apiary at any given time. But just like before, the bees are now going to pollinate on the nectar block. They're then going to fly back to the apiary. They're going to produce combs, and then they're going to fly back out. And those combs are going to be available up in here. Now, the benefit, like I said before, first of all, the benefit is just that they produce more combs, which is great. And as we go further and further up the tiers of apiaries, they're going to produce even more combs. But one of the big benefits that we're going to get is the breeder. This guy is not too difficult. It does require another apiary storage here, which should be fine. We just need another regular hopper. And again, let's do this. Do we have enough cobblestone honeycomb blocks left? We do. We got 7 left. Perfect. Let's do a quick one of these, get another apiary storage, and craft up that apiary breeder. This, again, can go kind of anywhere in the apiary structure. I think this guy should come out. Oh, yeah, there we go. Look at that. You can see how long he's got left inside of the hive. I think that's our bee that was producing. We can check. Because look at that. We got 8 honeycomb. And the benefit there is clear because that time we got 8 honeycomb from 1 bee going into the apiary and producing resources. So before, every time 1 bee went in, we would get 1 honeycomb. And we'd have to wait until, enough bees went in there to get 8 honeycombs before we got anything. This time now, every single time a bee goes in there, it's going to take a little bit of time to produce them, but when it's done, it produces 8 honeycomb, making it just substantially better. And you can see here how long is left. It looks like it takes 450 ticks for that to work. And 450 ticks, if you divide it by 20, is 22.5 seconds, which is pretty fast. The apiary breeder, as I was saying, can go anywhere. And where do I want to put this? I might put it like here. It's going to be awkward because I kind of want to have... Yeah, no, this is fine actually, because I think we only need 1 apiary breeder. We don't really want to put 1 apiary breeder into every apiary. This should be fine. Let's do this. Let's do this. And in here, we can now use this to, you guessed it, breed bees. So normally the way this would work is we'd take both of our iron bees, we put them down, and we would then right-click them with iron in order to get them to breed. In here, what we can do is we can just place both of these bees in, like this and like this. We can then put in the item used to breed them, in this case, iron, here and here, and then we can put empty jars in at the end, and this is going to slowly but surely just breed these bees together. And it's going to do it passively, so we can just leave this, and it's going to continually breed these bees over and over and over again until we run out of either iron or empty jars. Now, I am being told by the Twitch champ that the way the apiary works here is that only 1 of any given type of bee can be inside of the hive at any given time. So you'll see that right now there's 1 ancient bee in here. This second ancient bee, I don't think is going to go in until this bee comes out, which could be okay. So he's going to come out and then the other bee's going to go straight in. So I think that what we probably can do here then is we can probably have up to 9 different kinds of bees inside of this apiary. But then I think it might not be a terrible idea to have 18 bees in total in the apiary, 2 of each kind, so that there's basically no downtime. Because right now, this guy's pollinating. As soon as he's done pollinating, he's going to wait to go in the apiary. And then as soon as this guy's done, he's going to leave the apiary. He's going to go right in. And this is kind of like perfect efficiency from a bee standpoint. So we basically just need as many apiaries as we have bees divided by 9. So right now, we've got definitely more than 9 different kinds of bees. So we're going to need more than 1 apiary, which does mean we're going to need to get more than 1 nether star. But we do, of course, now have the ability to use our wither skeleton bees here. And to get these guys up and running, we just need to get the wither skeleton bee nectar block, this guy right here, which, as we saw before, really isn't too difficult. We've got enough skeleton honeycomb. Again, we've been getting that from our skeleton bee over there. And so we'll take 2 of these. Do we have enough wither skeleton skulls? We don't. However, we do have these wither skeleton skull fragments. And so we can do this. We can put these in over here, boom and boom. And as per usual, we can get another bucket of honey to allow us to get that block. And at that point, we're going to start generating wither skeleton nectar over in our apiary. Again, once that's done, we'll take it out. We'll plop it down over in here. And then we'll go ahead and drop down our 2 bees. And I guess we could import 1 as well, but I don't think that's strictly necessary. Once this guy goes in, I'll put the other guy down. And that's going to be good. people are asking in the Twitch chat what the benefit of upgrading the apiaries are, and you just get more resources. So right now, every time the bee finishes its time inside the apiary, we get 8 combs. If we upgrade to a tier 2 apiary, instead of getting 8 combs, we get 16 combs. So we basically double the amount of combs that we get from the same bees. And let's quickly do one of these. And then once you go up to the tier 3 apiary, instead of getting 16 combs, you get 4 honeycomb blocks, which is 36 combs. And then once you get to the tier 4 apiary, you get 8 honeycomb blocks, which is the equivalent of 64 combs. And so going from tier 1 to tier 8, you basically get 8 times as many combs and essentially 8 times as many resources from the exact same bees, which is good. And the thing to mention here is that when these iron bees do breed together, the resultant bee does end up in storage, which is why we have an iron bee in there. We can probably stop this because we really don't need more iron bees to be bred. But really, what I'm going to do now is, I guess, first and foremost, we could do with either getting another modular router up here with the sender, or just getting another puller, which we should actually have. Never mind, I thought we'd have more than one puller. We don't. We should make another tier 2 puller module, which at this point in time should be very easy for us to do. We have a tremendous amount of slime to make the sticky pistons. Of course, to do that, you do first have to make a regular piston, and then from there we can upgrade that to a sticky piston. From there, we can make ourselves the tier 1 puller module, and then we can upgrade that to the tier 2 puller module. This is the less efficient way of using ender pearls, but we do have 3,000 ender pearls, so I'm not too worried about it. And so if we do something like this, shift right click, and this, it should start pulling the combs from the apiary here over into our modular router, which then, of course, is going to distribute those amongst our centrifuges to begin processing all of this ancient honeycomb. And you'll see that we have so much ancient honeycomb compared to all of the other honeycombs that we were making over in our regular setup. And so we can go ahead and start moving all of our bees over here. That is going to work. And we can also go ahead and start setting up more apiaries to allow us to store all of our bees. But then we are going to have to, I think, fairly soon look at upgrading our setup over here. I'm going to push these to the front real quick because I do want to get, in fact, actually, I'm just going to go and do this the old-fashioned way. I'm going to put these into the manual centrifuge so that we can get some wither skeleton skulls. But what I was saying is that we are definitely going to want to look at upgrading our centrifuge setup, because I think very soon here we're going to end up in a situation where we're just not processing the combs anywhere near fast enough with our current 5 centrifuge setup. And so we're definitely going to want to look at upgrading to the multi-block centrifuge. This is super easy though, which I love to see. And of course, soul sand wise, we do only have one currently, but now that we have access to our nether wart in here, we can just do something like this. And if we take a few of these blocks, we can then head on over to our rock crystal and use that to transform these. Of course, we should definitely look at getting a soul sand bee so that we don't have to keep doing this manually. Oh, it looks like we get soul sand from the nether bee. That is interesting. Our nether bee, I don't think is currently up and running, but we definitely should get that nether bee going in the apiary. Real quick, let's just do this. We'll go 1, 2, and 3. Nice. And that's everything that we need in order to get another nether star. 1, 2, 3. Fantastic. There's another wither, and that's going to be our second nether star for yet another apiary. There are a few other things as well that we could do with getting nether stars for. The first thing that definitely comes to mind is the upgrade to the jars. Right now we've got our magma block underneath our superheated jar, but we could replace that with a beacon, and that would make this 4 times faster, which could be useful for some of the DNAs and some of the nether quartz, but I definitely do think getting the apiaries up and running first is going to be the way to go. Okay, so we have 9 different kinds of bee in here now, and I've chosen to embed these nectar blocks in the floor. I think it's just going to make it a little easier for the bees to do their pathing and flying around. And you'll see they're doing like an X across in the middle here. It does give us exactly 9 blocks. You have 5 and then 4. And so in here we've got tin, we've got wither skeleton, we've got nether, we've got ancient, we have got iron, gold, redstone, diamond, and steel. Those are our current bees. And of course we do have that extra nether star now, and so we could look at setting up another apiary. Before we do that though, we're already at a point where we are full up on combs. Look at this. We just can't move them fast enough over and process them fast enough with our centrifuges. There are 2 things we can do here. One is that we can increase the size of the apiary storage. If I go to add resourceful bees, there are a couple of hive upgrades that you can make, and they're not too expensive. So we can do a tier 1 to tier 2 hive upgrade. I think that just goes up in here on the left. That is not true. Use on previous tier. Oh no, sorry, this is the wrong item. This is what we used to upgrade our hives, I'm after this thing here, after the iron storage upgrade. This is a little bit more expensive, unfortunately. However, now that we have so many honeycombs coming in, it's probably in our best interest just to go ahead and take, some of the ancient honeycomb here that we've now got a staggering amount of and use that to make the blocks required for any of these upgrades. It seems crazy, given how, just last episode we were kind of waiting on ancient honeycomb to come in, but now we can use it to make yet more of these apiary storages. So here, if I do something like this, we do a hopper first, and then we'll use that to make our apiary storage. Again, we'll get rid of the redstone honeycomb blocks, and we'll use that to make the apiary storage. From there, we can make the iron upgrade, and then I don't know if you have to go through the different tiers or not. I think I would assume I've got to go with the iron tier first, but I'm going to take a risk here. I'm going to go straight to the diamond tier. If this doesn't work, it's not really the end of the world. It would just mean that we have to make the iron and gold tier before we can actually get to diamond. But on the off chance that it does work, can I just put this in here? I totally can. That's actually incredibly helpful. And you'll see now that we have a ton more storage in terms of holding all of these honeycombs. This isn't really a solution to the problem. It's more just a way of us being able to actually produce the honeycombs and hold them all. And so what we really need to do is upgrade our centrifuge setup. To do that, we have to make the multi-block centrifuge, which is this thing right here. There's two. There is the standard and then the elite. We do first have to make the standard to be then able to upgrade it to elite. But the standard centrifuge here is, I believe, a 3x3x4. Yeah, so it's 4 tall, 3x3 wide and deep. And basically, it's mostly made up of a lot of centrifuge casing. For this, we are going to have to get into power because we have to transform these waxed machine blocks, which we've seen previously are just steel, with 250,000 redstone flux into centrifuge casing, and then we need a little bit of it in order to make the centrifuge controller. So steel machine block wise, we can only make 22 blocks of steel currently, which is not ideal. However, we do have a steel bee in here, and it's probably in our best interest to get another steel bee going. Look at that, we've got so many wither skeleton skulls. That's probably going to start jamming up our system. It is indeed. These definitely do not need to go into a compacting drawer. We can probably just put these over here with the other heads. Okay, so I've made another steel bee, and I've also made another redstone bee. So those are now maxed out. So now it's just the nether and the diamond bees that we need to work on. But we do have a few problems that are arising. One, we're not pulling items fast enough out of our centrifuges. And so real quick, let's do what I said I was going to do earlier, and let's look at getting some speed upgrades. Finally, we've had these blaze rods for quite a while now. We can definitely look at getting some speed upgrades. The blank upgrades here are super easy for us to make at this point, and therefore the speed upgrades are pretty straightforward as well. And so we can use these to increase the speed of stuff like this. It should be able to pull items much, much faster. And then from there, we want to be able to send those around faster as well. Let's do this. And right now, soul sand does not have a drawer. That is fine. I'm going to put soul sand over here somewhere. We'll put it like there. And we can definitely do with upgrading that. But you'll see now the items are moving much, much faster around through all of this. And hopefully things are getting sent to where they need to go. We are probably backing up. Oh, we're not backing up. Interesting. This just needs a few stack upgrades is the problem, because right now it's only moving one item at a time. Thankfully, we have those bricks we smelted earlier, and so let's go ahead and throw a couple of stack upgrades in here. 6 is the max, and so I think we probably also want to get a few of these other machines upgraded to 6 as well. You already have 6, and you now have 6 as well. Perfect. And so now, if we look in here, we should see that all of the items that were backed up are now instantly taken and sent to where they need to go. Cool. So, with that in mind, let's take a look at upgrading to the higher tier of centrifuge. So, to make this work, as we saw a second ago, we first need to get into power with the energizing orb, and at the very least a starter energizing rod, but I think a basic energizing rod is really where we want to get to today. So, for the energizing orb, we need dielectric rods with a dielectric casing and some glass. The dielectric casing is just made with more dielectric rods of the horizontal and vertical variety. These are made using iron bars and dielectric paste. So dielectric paste, we probably eventually want to get with a dielectric bee, which is a cobble bee and a coal bee. This is really not too hard to get. Initially, though, we can get dielectric paste using coal or charcoal and the tiniest little bit of mana. And so if we take our coal here and we go and drop that into our mana pool, I'm hopeful that we should be able to get a stack of dielectric paste here, because again, the image that we see here is for the diluted mana pool, and the diluted mana pool has 1/1000th of the capacity of a regular mana pool, and so it really uses a minuscule amount of mana to make the dielectric paste, which is good. which means that we can now go ahead and do something like this. We can craft up some iron bars. We're going to need, I think, quite a few of these, and then we can use that to craft up some of these dielectric rods, and you can, thankfully, just go ahead and craft these directly from their horizontal version into the vertical version. Cool. And so with both of those, we should be able to make a dielectric casing, and from there, that should be everything for the energizing orb. Again, as per usual, I would prefer to use standard glass, which I have started smelting over here, and so we'll quickly do one of these, and boom, we have the energizing orb. Now, to power the energizing orb, to get the 250,000 redstone flux, or FE, they mean the same thing, to get the 250,000 power into the orb, that's where you need these rods, and these are the limiting factor because these determine the power throughput into the orb. The starter one here can only do 10 FE per tick, which means that it is going to put in 200 FE per second, which means if we want to get 250,000 FE in, it's going to take a lot of seconds. And so we want to upgrade maybe to the basic, that's going to do it 5 times faster, but then even potentially after that, to the hardened, to the blazing, to the nautic, to the spirited, to the nitro, to really start pumping power into the energizing orb. We do have to make all of them though. So to start with, the starter energizing rod is nether quartz. It's dielectric casing with 2 of these basic capacitor tiny. This is a basic capacitor that we can then downcraft into 2 tiny capacitors, and that is basically everything, I think, for this to work. The one thing that we don't have, as per usual, is nether quartz. And so we do have 1 nether quartz here, but again, we kind of want to keep that 1 nether quartz so we can keep making more nether quartz. How hard is the nether quartz be? It is going to be made with a nether bee going over a block of quartz. So we need to get 4 quartz and then have a nether bee fly over it. That really isn't too bad, and is probably almost certainly something that we should look at doing sooner rather than later, so we don't have to keep relying on this process here to get more nether quartz. Given that I don't think we necessarily need another apiary today because we've still not figured out our centrifuge situation, I actually might go ahead and just make the beacon here and put that beacon underneath our jar so that we can get better high temperature, and that's going to allow us to make this nether quartz just so much faster. So if we quickly replace this with a beacon, we did lose the magma block there, but I think that's fine. This should now be substantially faster than it was previously. And it is. It's gone from over 30 seconds down to 8 seconds, which is pretty nice. And so we will take that. That's going to allow us to make the first energizing rod. We do only need the 1, thankfully, per energizing rod that we make, but then upgrading them is pretty straightforward after that. So that's the starter rod. Getting the basic rod is kind of the same recipe. Oh no, we need a block of quartz here. I thought this was coal because I saw the black one. But other than that, this is basically the same recipe, but just with the basic capacitors instead of the tiny capacitors, and of course, another dielectric casing, and another nether quartz, which, you guessed it, we're going to have to run through the grindstone over here, and then back into the jar. And a bit more nether quartz later, we can make another block, and we can make our basic rod. So let's go put this down and show off how this works. So first things first, I am fairly certain that you can't put these on energy pipes, which is pretty awkward. So we're going to have to get some other kind of energy cable. I think power does add its own energy cable. It does. And the first cable here, the starter cable, is pretty good in that it can transfer 100 FE per tick, which is fine because right now this basic cable can only do 50 FE per tick anyway. So let's make some starter energy cable. And then from there, I don't think you can connect these together. That would have been far too easy. And so instead, we're going to have to get dynamos that are dedicated for this setup. So what I think we will do in our ever-increasing game of musical dynamos, I'm going to go and steal this dynamo back temporarily, and we'll put it down over here. If I do this guy does not have a hardened upgrade kit. That's fine. We can steal one of these and place that in here. We can then get some lava and get this cooking. From there, we can throw down some cable like this, and what we can now do is we can place our energizing rods onto this cable, and that's going to provide power to those rods and also provide power to the energizing orb. These just need to be fairly close. I'm not entirely certain of the range. I think it might be like 7x7 or 5x5 around the energizing orb, but so long as they're close enough, we can now use this energizing orb to craft stuff. For example, if we wanted to do the craft for the casing, we would need that waxed machine block. The waxed machine block is pretty straightforward. We just need the steel block and the trimmed planks. I think we are out of trimmed planks. We are indeed. I think we accidentally used some earlier for stuff that we shouldn't have done. For example, right there, it's bizarre that you can use them to kind of downcraft back to the previous tier of plank. Either way, let's quickly do this. Let's craft up another set of waxed planks like this. I'll go ahead and make quite a few of these, I think. Perfect. And then we can craft those up into trimmed wax planks. Fantastic. And from there, we can craft ourselves up a machine block. And so if we go and right-click that onto the energizing orb, that's instantly going to start the craft. But again, as you'll see here, we need to get 250,000 redstone flux into this energizing orb, and our current setup here is just pretty slow. 50 redstone flux per tick is 1,000 redstone flux per second, which means it's going to take 250 seconds, which is over 4 minutes in order to transform this, which is not ideal because we need a lot of this casing. That's only going to get us one centrifuge casing, and then don't forget, we need to build a 3x4x3 multi-block structure in order to make this work. And so we are definitely going to want to increase our power production and increase the number of energizing rods. I'm going to take this out. It's a bit of a waste, but I think we want to start by upgrading the energizing rods, and then we can look at upgrading the power after the fact. The next tier of energizing rod is this one right here. It's hardened. For this, we need more nether quartz, which is fine. We need more dielectric casing, which is fine. This time we need a higher tier capacitor. The hardened capacitor here is the basic capacitor with 4 energized steel. The energized steel is made in the energizing orb with iron and gold. Thankfully, those are both resources we have a fairly decent amount of, and so if we take 2 of each of those, we should be able to right-click those in, and that should begin transforming into energized steel, thankfully a little bit faster, just because it requires 1/25th the power, which is good. And so we can probably move up after the hardened. This can do 120 RF per tick. Blazing is the next one here. These require blazing crystals, and these are made with blaze rod or blaze powder. We do have a ton of blaze rods, so I think we can probably, straight away here, move up to the blazing energizing rod. That can do 300 redstone flux per tick. 300 redstone flux per tick is going to be 6,000 redstone flux per second, and so if we have 6,000 redstone flux per second going in, it's only going to take us 41 seconds per casing, which is much more palatable than 4 minutes per casing, which is a little excessive. So we do have to make some more regular capacitors here. We can then craft those into these thick capacitors, and then from there we can craft those into the hardened capacitors, which is all we need for this. I say all we need, it is not all we need. We first need to grab this guy right here, and then we also need to, of course, make sure we have enough nether quartz. I think we have 4 in here, but again, we need to have at least 1 spare, and so real quick, let's do, you guessed it, even more quartz grinding. And for nether quartz later, we can again make the block, and from there, we can make 1 more dielectric casing. We are finally out of dielectric rods. That's fine. Let's make some more. Let's do another one of these. Fantastic. And boom, that's everything for the hardened rod. Cool. So this can now move more power, 120 redstone flux per tick, which is good. But of course, now we run into a situation where our dynamo is only producing 80. So we're now limited on power production. The Twitch chat here does make a good point in that the energy cable from power is not particularly good, and the universal cable from mechanism is fairly cheap. This one right here can move 3,200 redstone flux per tick, and it's just steel and redstone. And so what I think we should do here is get rid of the energy pipes that we have down currently and kind of replace all of them, including the one that goes down there, with these energy pipes from mechanism. And the benefit that we're going to get there is that now when we put an energizing rod here, not only does it get power from this magmatic dynamo, it can also pull power from any and all of our magmatic dynamos. And so now we can go ahead and take the blaze rods here. Again, if we're going to make the next tier of energizing rod, we need to get 4 blazing crystals to make 2 of the capacitors. That really shouldn't be, oops, too bad. Let me go and put 1 of these in here, and let's see how long that's going to take. 1 blaze rod shouldn't take too long here, actually. We need to get 4 of these done because it's a 1-to-1 ratio, but that's going to allow us to get 300 RF per tick in. We could, in theory, go all the way up to Niotic here. The Niotic is just diamonds to make Niotic crystals. It is 300,000 FE, but I think that kind of brings us to our next problem, which is just power. Right now, we have these dynamos down, but these are just not cutting the mustard. We need to upgrade our power infrastructure to be able to make the higher tier centrifuge. We are going to have to power the higher tier centrifuge as well, which I don't think is going to be a problem. I don't think it uses a massive amount of power, but the bottleneck is just this here. Without waiting a staggering amount of time to get all the casing, I think we're going to first have to upgrade our power setup to allow us to make all of this stuff faster. there are a couple of options we have for that, including the reactor from power, which does require that we first get ourselves some uraninite in order to actually fuel that reactor. But I think that might not be a terrible way to go, just so that we're not waiting forever in order to make the centrifuge, because I also think we're going to need more than one multi-block centrifuge in order to process all of the combs. Because don't forget, right now we only have the one apiary down. We still need to build 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe even more apiaries. I don't know how many we're going to need, and we're definitely going to need a lot of centrifuges to process all of those combs. And so I think, chat, what we'll do next time, we will come back, and I think we'll start by looking at getting a power upgrade. Whether that's from power itself or from a different mod, I'm not too sure, but we definitely want to look at upgrading our power infrastructure, and then we'll look at getting those centrifuges up and running, and we'll also, of course, look at getting more apiaries down as well. You can see already we're really starting to fill up on here with far too many combs, which is kind of a good problem to have, but it is indeed a problem for future Isaac. For now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Sky Bees 2 there.